The night air over Venice carries the scent of salt and centuries-old stone, the kind of fragrance that clings to the narrow alleys and echoes softly over the black water of the canals. Lanterns sway gently on their moorings, casting molten ribbons of gold across the lagoon. Somewhere in the quiet, a gondolier hums to himself, his voice dissolving into the hush of the hour. It should be a peaceful night. The kind Gabriel Allon has always loved. The kind that makes him forget for a moment the years of danger and shadows that have defined his life. He's here for something simple, something pure. The delicate restoration of a Titian, a painting whose beauty has weathered time but now begs for a careful, reverent hand. In the dim light of his studio, brushes laid neatly beside bottles of rare pigments. Gabriel bends close to the canvas, searching for the secrets beneath its layers. His work has a rhythm, a calm precision. The world beyond these walls feels far away. Wars, spies, betrayals, when they belong to another version of him. This version only serves the truth of the art, but Venice has a way of folding beauty and danger into the same breath. Tonight, a faint disturbance breaks the serenity, the splash of something heavy meeting the water outside. At first, he ignores it. The city is full of such noises. Cargo, refuse, sometimes even fish leaping in the dark. But then the muffled shouts carry through the window, sharper this time. Gabriel straightens, instinct tightening his chest. It's not the sound of merriment. It's fear. He slips out into the cool night, his footsteps muted on the damp stones. The moon is a pale disk behind thin clouds, its reflection broken by the ripples in the lagoon. Near the edge, a small knot of people leans over, pointing. A gondola rocks nearby, its owner clutching the railing with white knuckles. Gabriel moves closer and the smell hits him. Brackish water laced with something coppery, something wrong. Then he sees it. The body of a woman, her face pale beneath the moonlight, dark hair drifting like seaweed in the current. A faint bruise blooms along her temple, a shadow in the light. Her eyes are closed, as if she's only sleeping. But the stillness is too perfect, too final. A policeman arrives, his voice low but urgent as he disperses the onlookers. Gabriel lingers at the fringe, watching, his restorer's eye catching details others miss. The elegant cut of her dress, the faint smear of makeup as though she had been crying. And on her left hand, the absence of a ring, though the skin bears its ghostly outline. This is no accident, no careless fall into the water. The officer glances at him, recognition flickering for just a heartbeat before moving on. Gabriel turns away, but the image burns itself into him. He has restored paintings ruined by centuries of neglect, yet here lies something no hand could restore. A life torn from its frame. Back in his studio, he tries to return to the Titian, but the brush feels heavier than it should. The bristles tremble faintly in his grasp. Every time he closes his eyes, he sees her drifting in the water, feels the pull of something deep beneath the surface. A current that wants to drag him back into the dangerous tides he thought he had left behind. And somewhere in the shifting shadows of the city, someone is already watching him. If you find this summary helpful, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to Novel Whisper Official, and comment below the title of the novel you'd like us to summarize next. We'll make it happen soon. The bells of a distant church mark the hour, their echoes weaving through the dark canals. The night resumes its quiet, but the peace is an illusion now. Gabriel knows what he has felt, the electric edge of danger that never truly leaves him. And though he doesn't yet understand why, he knows the still water of Venice has just hidden a storm. Dawn slides over Venice like a brushstroke of pale gold, softening the edges of its palaces and spilling light across the lagoon. Gabriel stands at the window of his modest apartment above the restoration studio, watching gondolas bob gently in the early tide. Below, the fish market is already alive with movement, fishermen calling out their morning catch, women haggling over prices, and the briny air thick with the scent of the sea. It's the sort of scene that should anchor him in the present, keep his mind on the Titian that waits for him downstairs. But the woman's face from last night drifts through his thoughts like a specter, refusing to let him go. By mid-morning, Gabriel is deep in his work, leaning close to the centuries-old paint. A tiny flake of gold leaf loosened by time clings stubbornly to the brush's edge. As he teases it free, his eyes catch something unexpected beneath the overpainting. A faint outline, delicate yet distinct, like a whisper from another era. The pattern is unmistakable, the curve of a face, the arch of a brow rendered with a skill that could belong only to a master. His pulse quickens. He shifts the lamp, adjusting the light to confirm what his instincts are telling him. This is not Titian's original composition. Beneath the familiar layers lies something far older and far rarer. He has seen it before in books and photographs, but never with his own eyes. The unmistakable hand of Leonardo da Vinci. Gabriel steps back, forcing himself to breathe. It's not unusual for great works to be painted over, especially in the turbulent centuries when canvases were reused or altered to suit new patrons. But to find a Da Vinci hidden beneath another Renaissance masterpiece is to stumble upon a treasure beyond imagination. A treasure that could upend the art world. He spends the rest of the morning testing his theory, working carefully, each brushstroke measured, precise. By midday, the curve of a jaw and the shimmer of a half-revealed eye emerge from beneath the pigments. She stares out from history, serene yet knowing, as though she has been waiting for him. A knock at the door pulls him from his trance. When he opens it, a man in the crisp black of the Vatican's cultural office steps in, his voice warm but edged with formality. "Signor Allon," he says, "there are matters in Rome that require your expertise." The way he says it leaves little doubt. This is not an invitation to admire the Sistine Chapel. Gabriel's instinct is to refuse. His life in the shadows has cost him dearly. The quiet work of restoration is his refuge. But the man's next words snare him. "His Holiness requests your presence." Hours later, he is seated in a discreet Vatican chamber lined with shelves of ancient texts. The Pope, dressed in simple white, studies Gabriel with eyes both kind and weary. "You have found something extraordinary," the pontiff says, his voice low. "But there are forces who will do anything to possess it." Gabriel feels the old weight settle on his shoulders. The woman in the lagoon, the Da Vinci beneath the Titian. They are threads in the same tapestry, woven with secrets, greed, and danger. The Pope's request is not merely about preserving art. It is about protecting the very soul of the Church from those who would corrupt it for their own gain. That night, as Gabriel walks through the cobbled streets back to his lodgings, he is acutely aware of the eyes that follow him. Every footstep behind him echoes too perfectly. Every shadow seems to shift a fraction too late. He knows what this means. The discovery in his studio is no longer his secret, and the game has already begun. In the black water of the canal, his reflection stares back, not just the restorer, but the operative he once was. And for the first time in years, he feels the inevitability of his return to that dangerous life. Rome wakes with a bell's bronze yawn, a sound that gathers the city's shadows and folds them neatly beneath the rising light. The Vatican's dome floats in a fragile pool of morning sky, and beyond its colonnades, the world conducts its business with the practiced indifference of history. Gabriel moves with the tide, his steps quiet on the travertine, his coat carrying the damp memory of Venetian night. Inside a discreet side entrance, a Swiss guard nods him through with ceremonial neutrality, and a Monsignor with ink on his fingers, someone who knows manuscripts as well as the politics that guard them, leads him down a corridor lined with centuries. The room they choose is small, paneled and cool, its window cracked to let in a sliver of garden air. Waiting there is an old friend who wears worry like a borrowed vestment, his smile thinner than Gabriel remembers. They talk softly, the way men do when they've shared danger and survived it, each sentence landing with the precision of a restorer's brush. Names are not spoken more than necessary, but a pattern emerges. A woman found in a lagoon far from home. A whisper of a shipment diverted, paperwork adjusted by a hand trained to leave no fingerprints. And beneath a Venetian Titian, the breath of a sleeping genius, Leonardo stirring at the touch of light. The death will be dismissed, the friend says, gazing at the window as if answers might be hiding in the hedges. A tragic fall. Too much wine, perhaps. But she handled logistics for a discreet consortium. They move art for people who prefer not to be named. Gabriel feels it then, the shape of the thing. Not a single crime, but a lattice of them. Greed woven through power and sanctimony, a net strung across the delicate gulf between what is holy and what is merely valuable. The Da Vinci underpaint is a fuse that could burn through galleries, auction houses, private chapels, and bank vaults. It will not stay hidden. Who knows? He asks. Too many, the friend answers, and yet not enough to trust. They walk, two shadows slipping along a mosaic floor where saints and monsters share the same tesserae. The friend speaks of whispers inside the curia, quiet pressure applied to the Vatican museums by patrons of great generosity, a consortium that launders provenance as efficiently as money, a donor who buys penance by underwriting restorations. The Pope's name is not spoken often, but his presence is felt like a clean draft in a long-shut room. He believes in beauty, the friend says with a small shrug. He also believes men will do anything to own it. In a private archive, the Monsignor with ink-stained fingers lays out a thin dossier. There is a collector on the French Riviera who built a palace of glass to reflect the sea. An intermediary in London who never loses at anything, especially not at auctions. A restorer in Madrid with talent enough to repair miracles and morals elastic enough to counterfeit them. The woman from the lagoon appears on a manifest, once, then not at all, as if erased by a steady hand. She was the hinge on which the door turned. Why call me? Gabriel asks, though he knows. The answer is a bruise he has carried for years, because he can move between worlds. Because he understands both the music of paint and the silence of a gun. Because once, in a life he let go of and still cannot escape, he learned how to spring a trap without making a sound. The plan takes shape the way a forgery does, in layers thin enough to seem invisible until the whole becomes undeniable. They do not need to chase the painting that may or may not yet exist. They need to make the thieves come for something they cannot resist. If greed is the god of this temple, it must be baited with worship. I owe something with a convincing halo, Gabriel says. Something that would make men sell their souls to own it for an hour. The Monsignor looks troubled and a little thrilled. You would. I would make a miracle, Gabriel says, and the words taste of iron and old sins. That night he returns to Venice as if slipping back into a dream interrupted. The studio breathes its varnish-scented breath around him. He photographs the underdrawing with a gentleness bordering on reverence, then covers it again, protecting it not with secrecy but with patience. He stretches a new canvas. The first strokes are diagnostic, not devotional. Line, proportion, anatomy. He is not copying Leonardo. He is conjuring the inevitability of Leonardo, the mathematics of grace. The hand learns the cadence, the mind the logic of light. Days bleed into one another, marked by the tide and the quiet arrival of pigments he specifies in a message with no signature. Between sessions, the city reminds him it is alive. The gondolier who hummed the night of the body hums again, but the tune is slower now, as if he too has heard the rumor moving underfoot. Twice Gabriel senses a watcher at the end of the fondamenta, a figure that prefers reflections to mirrors, disappearing whenever he shifts his gaze. The forgery grows. It gathers the hush of a private chapel. the sly half-smile of a sitter who knows she's being immortalized and questions whether she should be. A wash, a glaze, a feathered transition where cheek becomes shadow, a sfumato that softens edges like a secret withheld. He salts the work with microscopic clues designed to seduce the right kind of expert and terrify the wrong one. The ghost of a pentimento here, a hand's reconsidered position there, little betrayals of process that only authenticity usually dares to commit. When at last he pulls back, the studio seems smaller, the air heavier. On the easel is an impossible thing, not a Leonardo, not a copy, but a story that insists on being true. "You'll do," he says under his breath. "You'll make them confess." The call comes as the bells rake at twilight. London first, a discreet dealer with a voice like polished wood suggesting a private viewing for a client who values confidentiality above all else. Then, as if in echo, the Riviera, a secretary who speaks for a man whose name floats on gossip the way superyachts float on sunlight. A plane is offered, a villa is promised. The sea will be the color of money. He agrees to London. He refuses the plane. He will arrive by train like a pilgrim carrying a relic wrapped in linen and caution. On the platform at Santa Lucia, he stands with an unremarkable case and the stoic patience of a man who knows that time is a tool. The watcher returns, briefly reflected in the train window, a figure made of posture more than face. Gabriel allows himself the luxury of belief. The bait has kissed the water. The line hums. Somewhere between Verona and the Alps, the phone vibrates with a message from Rome. A small, unmarked fund is ready. A room in a discreet embassy residence awaits. A curator at a major house has been prepared to look, to not look, to say the right thing at the right moment. The Pope does not appear in the text, but Gabriel can feel the man's quiet gravity behind the arrangements. The moral ache of a shepherd who loves art not as money but as mercy. Night drapes itself over the English countryside like a painter's cloth. In the reflection glass, Gabriel sees the version of himself who is only a restorer. Lined eyes, steady hands, a soul tired of men who mistake possession for love. Beside that image, like a palimpsest, the other self flickers. The operative who can lie with his face, who knows how to build a story strong enough to hold the weight of a trap. He chooses both. He chooses the only thing that has ever worked, to paint with deception and tell the truth with the capture. When the train slides into St. Pancras under its iron ribs, London breathes its coal-scented breath. The case is light, the night is not. Somewhere in the city's dense weave of lights, a collector, an intermediary, and a killer are about to step toward a canvas that feels like absolution. Gabriel steps too, into the con that will test the edges of faith, friendship, and the fragile line between restoration and ruin. London greets him with a sky the color of pewter and the faint taste of rain in the air. The taxi glides through streets where the old and the new seem to lean against each other for balance. Victorian facades reflected in the steel and glass of modern towers, each one casting its own shadow. Gabriel rides in silence, the linen-wrapped canvas resting across his knees, feeling the familiar hum of the city's pulse beneath the tires. London has always been a city of watchers. Tonight he is counting on it. The dealer's gallery sits in a narrow street near St. James's, a place where windows glow like lanterns in the dusk, and price tags are whispered rather than written. Inside, the air is cool and scented faintly of beeswax polish. Works of quiet importance line the walls. Portraits with eyes that follow, landscapes that seem to breathe. A man emerges from behind a partition, his suit as precise as his smile. This is Lionel March, the dealer who moves masterpieces the way other men move currency. His gaze slides briefly to the case in Gabriel's hands, then returns to his face with a spark of curiosity that Gabriel can almost hear. "You've brought it yourself," Lionel says, as though that were a rare and pleasing thing. Gabriel simply nods. Some things should be carried, not shipped. The private room is lit for intimacy, not the harsh light of appraisal, but the soft glow of seduction. Lionel clears a table and Gabriel unwraps the canvas with a restorer's care, peeling away the linen like a shroud from a relic. The painting emerges slowly, each inch a calculated revelation. The softened sfumato, the poised hands, the gaze that seems to measure the viewer and find them wanting. Lionel exhales a quiet, reverent sound. Extraordinary, he murmurs, leaning in without touching. It feels inevitable. Gabriel says nothing. The silence allows the painting to speak for itself. Every brushstroke has been designed to whisper authenticity. The pigments age just so, the craquelure pattern mapped like a constellation. Even the faint scent of old varnish coaxed from a concoction of resin and smoke carries the ghost of centuries. You'll want it authenticated, Gabriel says at last. Lionel smiles faintly. I already do, but yes, of course, I have just the man, discreet, incorruptible, and expensive. The name he offers is one Gabriel knows. A scholar who has written volumes on Renaissance masters, whose signature can send a painting's value spiraling upward like a kite in the wind. Within the hour, the scholar arrives. Silver-haired, thin as parchment, eyes sharp with both scholarship and suspicion. He circles the canvas slowly, occasionally bending close to examine a detail, his breath clouding the glass of his magnifier. He asks no questions, makes no comments, and when at last he straightens, he simply says, "Remarkable. If this is what it appears to be, then you have brought us something the world believed gone." It is exactly the phrase Gabriel hoped to hear. Tantalizing enough to stir the right ambitions, cautious enough to avoid commitment. The scholar leaves, promising a written opinion. Lionel's phone vibrates almost immediately after. He glances at the screen, then at Gabriel. My client wishes to see it tonight. The client turns out to be in a Mayfair townhouse with the kind of security more often found at embassies. The doorman's eyes are as blank as his expression, the cameras as small as they are numerous. Inside, the walls are hung with power. Rubens, Caravaggio, El Greco, the kind of collection that only the very rich or the very ruthless can assemble. The man himself waits in a study lined with books bound in leather and secrets. He is dressed in casual elegance, a silk scarf knotted loosely at his throat, his smile both charming and dangerous. He does not touch the painting, but he circles it like a predator considering prey. It is beautiful, he says at last. And beauty, as you know, is always expensive. The offer he names is large enough to silence most questions. But Gabriel knows better than to accept. The refusal is polite, framed as a matter of ensuring proper provenance. The collector's eyes narrow slightly, but the smile returns. Then perhaps, he says, we can keep in touch. By the time Gabriel steps back into the rain-slicked streets, he knows the bait has been swallowed. This man will not let the painting slip away, and neither will the others who will hear of it by morning. Lionel will see to that. The word will travel through the art world's hidden arteries, whispered over glasses of Bordeaux and across marble auction counters. In the cab back to his hotel, Gabriel watches the city slide by, its lights smeared by the rain on the glass. Every move now will be a step deeper into the trap he is setting, and every step will draw out those who would kill to possess what he carries. Somewhere between Trafalgar Square and the Thames, his phone buzzes with a message from his Vatican contact. Riviera interest confirmed. Prepare for next stage. Gabriel leans back, the weight of the case on his knees like a quiet promise. The game is moving quickly now, and soon the French coast will be the stage. He closes his eyes, letting the rhythm of the tires become the tick of a clock counting down to the next move. The channel crossing is a gray ribbon of water under a lid of cloud, a corridor between games. By the time Gabriel reaches Paris and then the Riviera, the sea has shrugged off its winter color and slipped into something more expensive. blue with a memory of glass. Villas cling to the hills like discreet confessions. In that bright geography, greed is never a stranger. It is the host who never leaves the party. He rents a modest room high above the corniche, the kind with a balcony that smells of sun-warmed stone and bougainvillea, and uses the first evening not to sleep but to call in the past. The first voice belongs to a woman who has made a life of seeing what men fail to notice. Ariel answers on the second ring from a restoration lab in Nice, where a Veronese has been teaching her patients. "You only call when the work is beautiful," she says, and he can hear the smile tucked into the words. He tells her about the ghost beneath the Titian, about London's murmurs and Mayfair's teeth. There is a silence that lasts the length of a held breath. "If you've stirred that hive," she says, "you'll need a net or a flame." He asks for records, varnish orders, pigment shipments, stretcher bars, custom milled to Renaissance proportions, anything that could map the movement of a shadow economy. Ariel keeps lists the way monasteries keep prayers. "I'll meet you," she says. Sunrise, same cafe as the time with the Caravaggio that wasn't. The second call roots itself through numbers that change as quickly as the weather over Jerusalem. Mikhail answers from a car where the engine is loud enough to be a warning. "You're early," Mikhail says. "I thought you'd wait until the bullets started." "Consider this the warm-up," Gabriel says. Mikhail laughs, all gravel and affection. They have traded favors and silences for years. "Bring a clean suitcase," Gabriel adds, "and a dirty mind." "I have 2 of each," Mikhail says. "Send me an address." The third message he sends without words. Only a photograph of the linen-wrapped canvas, its corner exposed just enough to show the amber varnish and a whisper of sfumato. Within minutes, a reply arrives from London's best rumor mill wearing a human face. Chiara, who has turned the art world's social niceties into instruments, is already at a party where collectors orbit money like moons orbit gravity. "Your fish are circling," she writes. "One of them has a yacht named for a Greek goddess who never forgave anyone." By morning, the cafe is a square of shade beneath a canvas awning. Ariel arrives with a leather folder and the kind of sunglasses that make the world confess. She spreads the papers like cards. "Pigments," she says, tapping a list that should be boring and isn't. "Lead white, azurite, verdigris, ordered in volumes that don't make sense for a single studio. And look here, a solvent that a certain Madrid restorer swears by. He's bought enough to strip a cathedral." Another sheet. Shipping manifests for anonymous crates declared as decorative objects, routed through warehouses where the lights are dim and the cameras point just left of the truth. "They use the same courier for legitimate work," she says. So the pattern disappears in the noise. The names attached to the orders are not names at all. Shell companies stacked like nesting dolls. But one address repeats, in Monte Carlo, in London, in Geneva. A private office that belongs to a fund whose investors like to talk about legacy while they buy immortality by the yard. "Can you get me inside?" Gabriel asks. Ariel's smile is small and sharp. "I can get you a conversation with the woman who waters the plants. She hears everything and repeats nothing. For you, she will make an exception." Mikhail arrives at noon, bringing with him air that smells faintly of cologne and trouble. He is broader than the last time, or perhaps the world has grown narrower. He orders lunch as if they have time to eat and slides an envelope across the table with the other hand. Inside, photographs with faces politely blurred, a layout of a villa whose owner collects not just paintings but people, and a list of security contractors who used to wear flags on their shoulders and now wear nothing at all. "Your Mayfair friend has a twin on the coast," Mikhail says. "Same taste, same appetite for risk, same allergy to prison. He hosts private viewings on Thursdays when the light is best for lies." "We'll need to be invited," Gabriel says. "That part is already done." Chiara says, appearing as if the cafe had decided to upgrade its elegance. She kisses Gabriel's cheek, Mikhail's knuckles. The air tilts in her direction. He heard, of course. They always hear. Word is you refused a number with too many zeros, which means you're either honest, insane, or hunting a larger number. He's betting on the third. They lean over the map of the Riviera as if plotting a storm. The villa in question clings to a cliff, backed by cypress and guarded by the sea. Cameras stitched into the stone like eyes. A staff that changes often enough to make patterns difficult and loyalty unlikely. A dock for guests who arrive by water to avoid the inconvenience of roads and rules. We're not stealing anything, Gabriel says, because some words have to be said aloud to keep them true. We're selling the idea of something and watching who buys. Oh, same sin, different church, Mikhail says, not unkindly. What do you need from me? Noise, Gabriel says, and the absence of it at the same time. Mikhail grins. A duet. The afternoon burns away, leaving the shadows to grow long and complicated. Chiara spends it on the phone, arranging what must never look arranged. A whisper to an auction house contact that a miracle has surfaced. A rumor that the Vatican has quietly discouraged export. An invitation that arrives in a velvet envelope because paper would be gauche. Ariel vanishes into a lab where pigments are questioned like suspects. By evening, she returns with a vial of resin that smells like old churches and can make a new canvas sigh like an ancient one. They reconvene on the balcony as the coast lights itself one glitter at a time. Below them, the road is a slow ribbon of headlights. Above, satellites cross the sky like efficient angels. Gabriel unwraps the canvas. Even in the fading light, the imitation breathes. It is not the Mona Lisa, and yet her cousin lives here. An echo made of mathematics and longing. We should give her a name, Chiara says, not the real one. A name men will whisper like a password. Il sorriso nascosto, Ariel offers, the hidden smile. Mikhail approves. Not bad, it sounds expensive. Night gives them the privacy that daylight refuses. Plans settle into their shapes. Mikhail will handle the periphery, identities for drivers and caterers, a delivery truck that belongs to nobody and everybody, a boat that can idle without attracting attention. Chiara will move among the guests like a gentle weather system, influencing tides without appearing to. Ariel will be the conscience of the painting, hovering near, correcting just enough to terrify the counterfeiters watching for tells, praising just enough to seduce the collectors watching for certainty. Gabriel will do what he has always done, walk the line where truth and invention borrow each other's faces. Remember, he says, we are not here to win, we are here to watch them try. They will try very hard, Chiara says. He has invited a rival, two men who pretend to hate each other because it makes bidding more erotic. Names? Mikhail asks. She gives them. One owns half of a shipping line and the better half of a football club's reputation. The other manufactures illusions for governments and calls them security solutions. Both have built temples to themselves and filled them with beauty they cannot understand. The vicar of St. Peter would like a miracle that doesn't end in blood. Gabriel says, let's do our best to give him one. He sleeps, if it can be called that, in a series of shallow dives into quiet. Dreams arrive like messages slipped under a door. A woman's hair floating in black water. A pope's hands folded in a private grief. A line of paint where shadow becomes skin. Sometime before dawn, he wakes with a decision in his mouth. He dresses, wraps the canvas yet again, and walks to the edge of the balcony where the sea waits like a witness. At sunrise, the four of them take their places. Ariel moves ahead to the lab and then to the boutique where the villa's staffed by cigarettes and gossip. Mikhail stations two men in a van that sells flowers and also carries a spectrum of alibis. Chiara steps into a dress that will be remembered inaccurately. Was it black? Was it blue? It was persuasive, that much is certain, and Gabriel, linen case in hand, goes where he is invited, through a gate that opens to wealth, along a path lined with citrus trees as neatly clipped as reputations, toward a door that will admit his false Leonardo and with it the truth about everyone who cannot resist her. The villa's steward greets him with the smile of a man who has never had to apologize for anything. "You are precisely on time," he says, admiring the case as one might admire a beautiful lie. Behind him, the house is a cathedral of glass and limestone flooded with light that forgives no flaws. Guests murmur like a congregation before the sermon. Somewhere, cutlery whispers across china. The sea leans in to listen. Gabriel feels the team tighten around him, an invisible ring. He steps into the room with the confidence of a man who believes in his own story, because in this moment he must. He sets the case on a table, undoes the clasps, and peels back the linen one last time. The hidden smile appears as inevitable as sunrise, and in the polished black of a window he catches the reflection of three expressions at once: hunger, calculation, and fear. It is enough. The loyal few have gathered. Now the unfaithful many will show themselves. They make a small theater of unveiling because everyone expects a performance. The steward dims the lights by a hair. A pianist in the next room hesitates mid-phrase as if he too has turned to look. Chiara drifts to the flank of the richest man in the room and becomes the kind of presence that suggests scarcity. Ariel hovers just behind Gabriel's shoulder, her hands folded like a conservator in prayer. Mikhail disappears into a shadow that contains a server's door, where all the logistics of luxury are arranged and sometimes broken. The first collector steps closer, a glass caught between his fingers with unconscious force. He says nothing for a time, letting the gaze of the sitter work on him. That ambiguous half-smile which feels like a secret shared at the drink's lip. "It is persuasive," he says at last, which is as close as men like him come to confession. The rival, tall and athletic in a way that money often buys late in life, tilts his head and looks for a place where the truth trips. He doesn't find it. His jaw tenses. They circle. The steward supplies numbers in whispers that travel no farther than necessary. A London intermediary appears at Gabriel's elbow as if conjured by desire. "We can place it discreetly," he murmurs. "Not public, not vulgar." "On the contrary," Chiara says, materializing with the warmth of a rumor. "A little vulgarity might serve us well." She smiles at the men as if they had a shared joke. "Consider a private lot through a major house, with a catalog that says only what is advisable and implies what is thrilling. It will give you deniability if it proves merely exquisite, and glory if it proves legendary." The men pretend to dislike the idea. They discuss provenance as if it were a religion they practice and not a language they pay others to speak. Ariel interjects just enough skepticism to raise their heart rates. "An export restriction is possible," she says. "One whispers the Vatican has taken an interest. Nothing galvanizes a certain kind of buyer like the suggestion of a door that may close." The host, gray at the temples in a way that suggests money more than age, makes a small, imperious gesture. Contracts appear. Lights adjust. Someone fetches a loop that cost as much as a car. Gabriel allows the inspection because the best lies survive a medium light. Under magnification, the craquelure maps like old mountains. The pigments answer the right questions. The underdrawing reveals itself not like a machine's plan, but like a mind in motion. The rival sucks a tooth in frustration because the painting refuses to betray itself in any of the obvious ways. They do not complete a sale that night, which is part of the seduction. Instead, they agree on a path. London first, discreet preview rooms with carpet that swallows footsteps. Then, if appetite proves appropriate, a private tender. The host wants the trophy without the theatrics. His rival wants the theatrics because he enjoys winning in public. Both leave the room convinced the process will favor him. They both thank Gabriel without ever using his name. Later, on the terrace where the sea rehearses its ancient hymn, Mikhail joins Gabriel with a plate of pastries that no one ate inside. "Our boy with the scarf sent a message while you were talking about morality," he says, offering a sugared crescent. "To a fund in Geneva. Money is warming up. And the rival? He phoned a fixer who once owned a minister by the week. He asked for a back channel to a museum director who has a habit of recognizing genius on Tuesdays." Mikhail shrugs. "We can route both channels through the same throat." In London, the auction house on King Street keeps a suite of private rooms for objects that are not yet themselves. The carpet is thick, the light is angled, and the walls are the color of restraint. A code name goes on the viewing schedule. Lot A, private old master portrait, because naming a thing too soon can make it vanish. Chiara shakes hands with 3 people and kisses 2 more, and the door opens. The curator who sees it first has an expression like a surgeon hearing an unfamiliar heartbeat. He doesn't say Leonardo because he is not a fool. He says circle of Leonardo, and then, with a small recalibration of breath, workshop, with strong autograph passages. The phrasing is a ladder for the market to climb. Ariel observes the climb with professional melancholy. "It is dangerous to stand on a high rung," she says softly, and the curator smiles as if she had told a joke about his childhood. The house's condition report is written in a language designed to keep everyone alive. The panel has been thinned in a likely 19th century intervention. Minor, stable uplift along the lower edge. Retouching visible under UV in areas consistent with age and handling. Gabriel reads it and finds nothing he didn't place there himself. He sees also what the wording invites. The fantasy that this is a survivor that has stumbled into daylight wearing a borrowed name, ready to be claimed with enough conviction and cash. Word moves as it always does, through telephones and lunches, through polished shoes that walk from Pall Mall to Berkeley Square. The rival from the Riviera arrives on a rainy afternoon with a wife who looks at everything as if she had been promised it once, and then forgot to collect. He studies the painting, asks calibrated questions, pretends indifference, and leaves a number that would put a museum's acquisitions committee into cardiac prayer. An hour later, the host's representative calls from a number that changes every time it rings. His offer is larger, delivered with the patience of someone for whom patience is a hobby, not a necessity. Mikhail supplies the duet of noise and absence. The noise, a whisper seeded into the ecosystem that a certain Central European museum has quietly inquired. That a private foundation with a pious name has opened a short-term credit line. That a Roman cardinal has frowned. The absence, a stillness around certain questions: when exactly the work surfaced, how precisely it slept, who framed it last, so that curiosity gnaws where certainty should sit. Gabriel watches patterns the way restorers watch drying varnish. He sees where interest overlaps with fear, where fear pairs with bravado. He notes who scans the frame more than the face: dealers, who stares only at the face, zealots, who looks anywhere but the eyes, men with things to hide. At a cafe off Duke Street, he meets a journalist whose prose can move markets without ever stating a fact. They talk about the weather. They talk about the rising tide of old master prices. They do not talk about the painting that is not a painting. 2 days later, a column appears describing a quiet frenzy around a lost lady. No names are printed. Everyone reads it as if their reflection were in the ink. What remains is the problem of provenance, the narrative spine that lets money stand upright. Ariel and Chiara build one like architects. Scraps of believable neglect. A 19th century bill for a panel repair done in Savoy. An estate inventory from a minor French noble whose descendants threw away everything but the wine keys. A photograph of a different painting that shares a frame profile with this one, dated in a way that suggests accidental substitution. Each piece can survive inspection because it asks to be believed without insisting. Gabriel slides them into a folder the color of discretion and hands it to the house, where it is stamped and entered, and thus, by an alchemy human beings have adored since temples were built, made real. There is a meeting in a room with no art at all, only a long table and the scent of new paper. The auctioneers want a guarantee. The bidders want privacy. The house wants a night that will be whispered about into the next decade. Chiara gives them a format, a sealed bid tender among 4 pre-qualified parties, each permitted 1 escalation upon notification of a rival's bracket. You will not be humiliated, she promises them, which is the only custodianship of ego that matters in such rooms. In the tunnel between the house's private entrance and a hotel that pretends not to notice, Gabriel feels the text arrive in his pocket like a raised temperature. The source is the Monsignor with ink-stained fingers. There is a leak, it reads, a small one, but it can flood a chapel if left alone. Attached is a name from the Vatican museums, a deputy with access to conservation logs who has been visiting Monaco with unusual enthusiasm. For a price barely worthy of the word, he will authenticate whispers, sabotage export applications, and reassure men who should not be reassured. The consortium has a priest of sorts. Gabriel stands very still, the city's damp pressing in. The painting waits upstairs, convincing enough to make saints hedge their bets. The buyers are lined like dominoes. The house smells a record. And now there is a man in Rome whose phone can turn certainty into ash. It is an old lesson. Every con is an inside job unless you seal the doors. When he reaches the suite, Mikhail is sitting on the couch with his shoes off, as if that detail alone kept the natural order in place. Bad news? He asks. Predictable news, Gabriel says. He pours a measure of something that claims to be scotch and watches it pretend to be peat. We close our leak. Then we let the river rise. Outside, London drizzles on the city like a long-held thought. Inside, 4 names are about to write numbers on paper that will travel the world without a passport. Gabriel rests his palms on the table and feels the grain, the small resistances that tell you what a surface can bear. He has learned to listen to such things. He will listen now. To steps in hallways, to names murmured too quickly, to the sound a lie makes when it decides which side it openly in daylight. Yachts polished to a mirror sheen, champagne flutes catching the sun, and the scent of salt mixed with expensive perfume drifting down the promenade. By the time Gabriel returns from London, the heat has settled low over the coast, a kind of golden haze that makes everything appear dreamlike, softened at the edges. But dreams are never without their shadows. And he knows this stretch of coastline harbors the kind of people who write history in invisible ink. The villa chosen for the next act clings to the cliffs above Cap Ferrat, with a sweep of marble steps that seem designed for entrances that make a point. From the terrace, the Mediterranean sprawls beneath the sun like a jewel someone has carelessly left out in the open. Security is discreet but thorough. Earpieces in the staff, subtle cameras at the corners, a pair of guards whose casual postures hide an unblinking alertness. Gabriel arrives with the painting in its linen shroud, carried not as a burden but as if it were simply another part of him. Chiara meets him in the driveway, her gown cut in a way that makes people watch her instead of the man carrying the art. They're both here, she says without preamble. Our host is in the West Salon and his rival is pretending to enjoy the garden. She glances at the case, ready to let them feed. Inside, the air is cool and scented faintly with citrus. The villa's interior is a curated theater of excess. Sculptures on plinths, walls lined with canvases whose provenance would make lawyers sweat. The host greets Gabriel like an old friend, the kind of greeting that folds respect and curiosity into a single handshake. He gestures to a long oak table near the window, where filtered sunlight will make the painting breathe in exactly the right way. When Gabriel peels back the linen, conversation in the room stills. Even those who know the game, who have seen the hidden smile before, lean in as if this moment might reveal something they missed. The host tilts his head, eyes narrowing with satisfaction. His rival steps forward slowly, like a man unwilling to admit he's already decided he wants what he sees. Ariel, standing near the far wall, begins her part with quiet authority. "Note the modeling of the hands," she says, voice pitched to Carrie without intrusion. "The geometry of the drapery. And here the subtle pentimenti. Choices reconsidered in the working process. Something only an artist at the height of his powers dares to leave visible." Her words are bait wrapped in scholarship, just enough to stoke both greed and doubt. The host's attention sharpens. "I assume," he says, "we are not here for admiration alone." Chiara smiles lightly. "Admiration is complimentary. Ownership, of course, is more involved." She allows the implication to hang, then glances to Gabriel. "Shall we discuss placement?" The rival interrupts before Gabriel can speak. "If this is to be offered, I propose a direct acquisition. No intermediaries, no theater." His eyes flick briefly toward his host, the challenge unspoken but understood. Gabriel keeps his voice mild. "I'm not opposed to efficiency, but transparency in these matters has its own value." He lets the words do their work. Transparency to unsettle the rival, value to spark the host. What follows is not negotiation so much as a slow tightening of the room's temperature. Offers are floated, countered, dressed in conditions that are designed as much to antagonize the other man as to appeal to Gabriel. Chiara watches with the expression of a hostess enjoying her own party. Ariel steps in when the tension risks snapping too soon, offering small insights into conservation and care, each one a reminder that possession means responsibility. At a signal from the host, wine appears. Chilled Sancerre poured into crystal so thin it hums faintly under the touch. Mikhail slips into the room during the pour, dressed as a courier with a padded envelope in hand. He crosses to Gabriel and murmurs just loud enough for the others to catch fragments. "Geneva confirmation. Vatican contact neutralized." The rival glances up sharply at that last part, masking the flicker of recognition behind a sip of wine. Gabriel nods once, a silent cue to Mikhail to vanish as swiftly as he arrived. It's enough to plant unease in both men. The host wonders how much Gabriel knows. The rival wonders how compromised his own arrangements have become. In the space of that doubt, Gabriel begins to steer them toward the next stage, a setting where their greed can be measured and their limits tested without either man realizing they are revealing themselves. The host suggests a private evening viewing at his Monte Carlo residence, for selected eyes only. His rival, unwilling to cede ground, insists on attending and offers to bring a friend whose influence in the art world is meant to intimidate. Gabriel agrees to both conditions, already knowing that every extra witness is another thread to pull. When he leaves the villa, the sun is folding itself into the horizon, casting the sea in molten orange. Chiara walks beside him to the car, her voice low. "You saw it, didn't you?" The way the rival froze when Mikhail mentioned the Vatican. "I saw," Gabriel says, "and I'll see more in Monte Carlo." She smiles, sharp and approving. "Just be ready. Men like these don't lose gracefully." The road back to his small room winds along the cliffside, the sea on one side, dark rock on the other. Gabriel drives with the window down, the salt wind filling the car, his mind already shifting pieces on the board. Monte Carlo will be the crucible, and the hidden smile, a fiction born in a quiet Venetian studio, will be the fire that burns away the pretense to show what lies beneath. Monte Carlo glitters as if someone has poured molten gold into the harbor and let it set into yachts. Every surface seems to reflect something: water, light, ambition. And the streets hum with the quiet confidence of those who have never been denied entry anywhere. Gabriel arrives by car along the coastal road, the hidden smile secured in the linen-wrapped case on the seat beside him. From the driver's window, the scent of salt is sharper here, mixed with the faint tang of gasoline from the sleek launches threading the marina. The residence chosen for tonight's gathering is not merely a home, but a declaration. A modernist palace of glass and pale stone perched above the sea. The architecture invites the world to look in, while the security suggests not everything will be seen. At the gate, a guard in a perfectly pressed suit checks Gabriel's invitation with the efficiency of a man who could recite the guest list from memory. The moment the barrier lifts, a uniformed attendant opens the car door as if welcoming a visiting dignitary. Inside, the air is cool and faintly perfumed with jasmine from the garden outside. A chandelier shaped like a cascade of frozen water dominates the foyer, scattering the light into 1,000 shards. Beyond it, the West Salon has been arranged for a performance without appearing so. Clusters of low chairs, a central table beneath a soft spotlight, and a sweeping view of the Mediterranean beyond the glass. Guests circulate with glasses of pale wine, speaking in the measured tones of people used to being overheard. Chiara is already in the room, leaning lightly against the back of a chair. Her gown a shade of deep emerald that catches the light when she turns. She greets Gabriel with the kind of warmth that makes onlookers wonder how much they have missed between them. "Our host is playing magnanimous," she murmurs. "The rival is pretending to be above it all. And the friend he brought? An advisor who can ruin a painting's value with a single raised eyebrow." Gabriel's gaze drifts toward the man in question. Tall, silver hair brushed back, eyes like pale glass. He's speaking to Ariel, who stands as calm as a marble saint, her voice measured and deliberate. "I told him," she says quietly when she sees Gabriel, "that this work lives in the liminal space between fact and faith." He didn't disagree. "That frightens me more than if he had." Their host, impeccably dressed and smiling as if the evening were his personal gift to each guest, invites Gabriel to present the painting. The linen is drawn back with slow precision. Gasps are rare in these rooms, but there's a subtle shift. Conversations dip, eyes focus. The hidden smile glows under the spotlight, sfumato softening the gaze, shadows and light caught in the eternal half-second between breaths. The rival's advisor moves forward, hands behind his back, studying without touching. "She is persuasive," he says, echoing the words from the Riviera. Then with the faintest smile, "And persuasion is an art in itself." The host takes a sip of his wine, his glance sliding toward his rival. "Perhaps tonight we speak openly. There is no auctioneer here, no catalog, only the painting and us. Let us be honest men for once. It's the perfect moment for Mikhail to appear. Not as a courier this time, but as a guest's assistant, carrying a slim folder." He places it discreetly beside Gabriel. Inside are photographs and financial trails linking certain funds to the very courier network Ariel had uncovered in Nice. Gabriel doesn't need to read them now. The weight of the folder is enough. Chiara steps into the conversational gap. "Gentlemen, the challenge here is not price alone. It is the question of stewardship. This work could vanish into a vault, unseen for decades, or it could be placed somewhere that allows its story to continue." The rival laughs softly. "Stories are for books. Paintings are for those who can protect them, or for those who can hide them," Ariel adds, her tone gentle but edged. A pause stretches thin and taut. Gabriel lets it hold, then breaks it. "There will be a decision. Soon. But understand this. Whoever takes her will also inherit the interest she has already drawn. That interest may not always be benign." The host nods slowly, understanding the warning is aimed at both of them. His rival's expression hardens, though the smile remains. Offers are made, numbers that would make a curator's heart seize, but Gabriel does not commit. Instead, he agrees to consider them in the morning, framing it as respect for the gravity of the choice. The night winds down with the slow rhythm of expensive evenings. Coffee served in delicate porcelain, a final sweep of the salon for lingering admiration of the painting. Discreet departures into the soft Monte Carlo night. Outside, the air is cooler, scented with the sea and a hint of exhaust from the waiting cars. As Gabriel steps toward his own, Chiara's voice catches him. They're both hooked, but the rival's friend? He's the one to watch now. He didn't come here for the art alone. Gabriel glances back toward the villa, where the advisor stands in the doorway speaking quietly to the rival. The man's posture is too precise, his interest too focused. Somewhere in that measured stillness, Gabriel senses the touch of the consortium. The Vatican leak perhaps wearing a different name. He gets into the car, the case secure beside him. Monte Carlo's lights fall away in the rearview mirror, replaced by the darkness of the coastal road. Ahead lies the decision point, where the con will either force the truth into daylight or vanish into the shadows it was designed to lure. And tonight he feels the shadows moving. Morning breaks in Monte Carlo like a soft spotlight, the sun slipping through glass towers and onto the harbor where the yachts float in languid formation. Gabriel sits at a small table on the balcony of his hotel suite, the linen-wrapped, hidden smile resting on the chair beside him like an unspoken question. Below, the city hums with early movement. Staff preparing terraces for breakfast service, delivery vans humming through narrow streets. The scent of bread mingling with salt air. The night before had been a performance, but today is meant to be the culmination. The host has requested a private meeting for the sake of clarity, while his rival has arranged one of his own through Chiara, insisting that Gabriel hear a final and serious proposal. The two invitations arrived within an hour of each other, a clear sign that patience is nearly gone. That is exactly where Gabriel wants them, close enough to see the prize, afraid someone else will take it. By mid-morning, the west salon of the host's villa has been transformed into something between a negotiation chamber and a confessional. The curtains are drawn to soften the light, the central table cleared except for a crystal carafe of water and 2 tumblers. The host enters alone, no advisors, no distractions. He circles the table once before sitting opposite Gabriel. "I'll be frank," he says, folding his hands. "My rival will bury this painting, hide it away in some fortified room where only he can gloat over it. That is not how such beauty should be treated. In my possession it will be appreciated, admired by those who understand." He names a figure larger than any before, a sum designed to shut down conversation. Gabriel listens, watching more than hearing. The way the man's gaze flickers toward the covered painting, the tightness in his fingers when he gestures. This is no longer about art. It is about winning. "Your offer is generous," Gabriel says carefully, "but generosity in this world is rarely without a cost." The host's smile does not reach his eyes. "In this case, the cost will be mine alone. You walk away with a fortune. I walk away with history." Gabriel leaves without agreement, offering only the promise to speak again soon. The moment he steps outside, Mikhail is waiting by the car. "Our other friend is growing restless," he says. "He's moved his meeting forward. Wants you now." The rival's suite in a Monte Carlo hotel is a study in controlled opulence. Dark wood paneling, floor-to-ceiling windows framing the sea, and a faint scent of cigars embedded in the furniture. The rival stands at the window, hands clasped behind his back. His advisor from the night before sits nearby, silent and watchful. The rival wastes no time. "Whatever he offered, I'll top it by 10%. And I'll make sure the work never leaves Europe." The words are sharp, calculated to suggest legitimacy and responsibility. But the advisor's slight shift in his chair tells Gabriel there's more behind the curtain. Gabriel meets the man's gaze. "And if I told you the Vatican already has eyes on this work?" The advisor smiles faintly, the kind of expression that neither confirms nor denies. "The Vatican has eyes on many things. That doesn't mean they can reach them." It is the slip Gabriel was waiting for. An admission of involvement without speaking the crime. He files it away, knowing it will fit into the larger mosaic of the con. By late afternoon, the painting is moved to a neutral location, a discreet room above an auction house's Riviera office. Both men are invited for what is described as the final preview before formal commitment. Chiara orchestrates the seating so neither can dominate the room. Ariel positions herself at the painting's side, ready to answer questions with precision and a hint of warning. Mikhail stands at the door, greeting arrivals with the air of a man who belongs everywhere. When the linen is pulled away, the air changes. Not because they haven't seen it before, but because they know this may be their last chance to claim it. The host leans forward, voice low. "Name your figure." The rival counters almost before the words finish, his number higher, his tone clipped. Back and forth they go, the tension winding tighter with each exchange. Gabriel lets them fight, intervening only to remind them of certain sensitivities. Possible export restrictions, the interest of other parties, the need for discretion in financial transfers. Each warning is a spur, each obstacle a challenge that makes the prize feel more dangerous and therefore more desirable. In the end, they agree to submit sealed offers by midnight, each convinced that his will be the one accepted. Gabriel watches them leave, their bodyguards falling into step, their eyes fixed on the prize but wary of the other man's shadow. That night, alone in his hotel room, Gabriel places the hidden smile on the bed. He runs his fingers lightly over the frame. Not the work itself, but the border that contains it, the boundary between fiction and fact. In a few hours, one of these men will believe he has bought a piece of history. The other will believe he has lost it. Both will be wrong. From the balcony, Monte Carlo glitters below, beautiful and indifferent. Somewhere in the city, two men are sharpening their arguments, sealing their bids and convincing themselves they've outplayed everyone else. Gabriel knows better. The real game will be decided not by the numbers they write, but by what they reveal in the moment they think they've won. The bids arrive as numbers that think they are destinies. One comes by encrypted courier, the other by a lawyer whose cufflinks carry more authority than most flags. Chiara receives both in a private office above the Riviera branch of the auction house, sets them side by side and does not smile. "They have written their confessions," she says. Ariel stands at the window studying the sea. "We should choose a church," she replies, not to be clever, but because some absolutions require stone. Gabriel leaves Monte Carlo before dawn. The hidden smile lies in its linen shroud across the back seat, as quiet as a secret between breaths. Mikhail drives without comment until the hills fall away and the Italian plains begin. "You could end it here," he says at last. "Pick one money prince, take his number, and call it a day." Gabriel watches the road unravel. It doesn't end with the numbers, it ends with the names. Rome receives them like an old friend pretending surprise. The Vatican stone cools the heat of the afternoon, swallowing footsteps, confessing only the sound of sparrows in the colonnade. In a discreet office behind the museums, the Monsignor with ink-stained fingers sets a file on the table and pins it there with two fingertips as if it might fly. "Your deputy," he says quietly, "has a cousin in Monaco who does not exist in any registry I can find. He travels without luggage and returns without sins. Photographs fanned like cards. The deputy in profile at a cafe off the Via Veneto. The same man a week earlier accepting a small envelope from a visitor whose face is habitually tilted away from cameras. an expense form in which coffee is coded as consultation and consultation is coded as charity. He authenticated whispers, the Monsignor continues. He shepherded an export request before it was born. He told your men where to look for doubt and where to find reassurance. A small shrug. He has been very helpful to the wrong flock. What does he know about last night? Gabriel asks. Enough to be dangerous, not enough to be safe. They move quickly because greed is faster than grace. Chiara lands in Rome with 2 envelopes, the sealed bids, and the resolve of a master of ceremonies who knows when to clear her throat. Ariel arrives carrying vials and papers and the weight of too many paintings ruined by men with money. Mikhail disappears into the city's interstices, fishing for the deputy's second phone and the number that controls it. The Pope is nowhere and everywhere, not in the room but present in the fact that the room exists at all. That people who love a picture more than a price have conspired to save both. The setting is not St. Peter's Basilica, which would be spectacle, but the broad embrace of St. Peter's Square, which is theater and cathedral both. A simple tented pavilion goes up beneath a white canopy near the edge of the colonnade, ostensibly for a private conservation consult with representatives from interested foundations. Rome is a city that understands euphemism. No one looks twice. The air smells faintly of incense from an earlier mass and of rain that has changed its mind. They stage the moment as a sacrament of paper. 2 chairs, 1 table, a cloth the color of modesty. The hidden smile remains veiled. A conservation light hums, its cone of brightness turned down to a courtesy. The host from the Riviera arrives first, not with his yacht's calm, but with a pilgrim's contained agitation. He is dressed as if for a funeral he intends to win. A few paces behind, punctual as envy, comes his rival with the advisor who wears skepticism like a silk tie. "Gentlemen," Chiara says, her tone the perfect blend of welcome and warning. "Thank you for coming. We are here to finalize stewardship under conditions of discretion and respect." The words hover, politely edged. Ariel takes her place by the easel. The Monsignor sits to one side, a pair of white gloves folded on the table in front of him like an unanswered question. Gabriel stands with the linen-wrapped panel in his hands. He does not uncover it. "Not yet. We have received 2 sealed offers." Chiara continues, her fingers poised on the envelopes. "Before any acceptance, a final condition must be satisfied. The museums require assurance that no Vatican official has been improperly engaged in matters of authenticity, export, or curatorial influence." The advisor's smile is immediate and smooth. "We, of course, would never—" "You good," Gabriel says mildly. "Then you will have no objection to a brief verification." Mikhail appears from the colonnade's shadow with a phone in one hand and a small recorder in the other. He places both on the table with a delicacy that makes the act louder. The rival's advisor flicks a glance at them and then away. The host watches everything as if memorizing a painting. "Yesterday," Mikhail says, "someone in Rome assured a buyer in Monaco that an export would be unhindered, that a particular scholar would be conveniently careful, and that the Holy See preferred discretion to dust." He taps the phone. "He said this from this device to the number we traced." He looks to the Monsignor. "To your deputy." The Monsignor does not flinch. He opens the file he brought and takes out a sheet with a neat grid of calls, towers, times. "The deputy has been relieved of access pending inquiry," he says. "He is praying in a room that locks from the outside." The advisor's smile thins. "This is all very theatrical," he says. "So is the market you conjure," Ariel replies and lifts a UV torch. "Shall we speak of light?" Gabriel unwraps the panel at last, revealing not the face, but the back. The men blink. Instead of the promised gaze, they see the architecture of deceit. A 19th century join, old worm tracks stabilized with modern resin, a paper label browned with age and errant Latin. Ariel tilts the UV lamp. Fluorescence blooms along the edges where the frame meets the panel. She speaks softly, a surgeon narrating for students. Retouching here, not to deceive, but to restore a fiction of wholeness. A reattached strip there to echo the dimensions of a companion work that never existed. Every falsehood here tells a true story about you. She turns the panel. The hidden smile rises into the light. She is persuasive because that is her vocation. The rival leans in, hungry. The host steadies himself with the table's edge. The advisor's eyes skate to the room's periphery, looking for exits that are not doors. Before we proceed, Chiara says, touching the envelopes, a word about stewardship. She nods to Gabriel. He thinks of Venice, the splash in the dark, the woman's hair moving like a prayer gone unanswered. He thinks of the Pope's quiet belief that beauty is a kind of mercy. He looks at both men and says the only true thing left. You cannot buy absolution, he tells them. You can only rent it, and only if you share. The host blinks, not understanding. The rival's jaw tightens, understanding too much. Do the terms, Chiara says, and her voice turns the square into a chamber, are as follows. The work will be placed on 5-year rotating loan to an institution named by the museums, insured at appraisal, exhibited with a label that reads, Private Collection, on loan. The owner will be identified only to the museums under seal. No reproduction rights without consent. No movement without notice. No private display in jurisdictions designed to erase memory. And the price? The rival asks, contempt like sugar on his tongue. The price is your offer, Chiara says, and places her hand on his envelope. Plus an endowment in equal measure for conservation education and for the restoration of works plundered by the same networks you traffic. She lets the last word fall lightly. If either of you refuses, the museums will petition for interdiction based on the evidence we now hold, and this panel will not cross a single border for a very long time. You have no right. The advisor begins rising. He sits when he sees the Monsignor lift one gloved hand. We have duties, the Monsignor says, and friends. The square holds its breath. Somewhere in the broad arms of Bernini's colonnade, pilgrims murmur the Apostles' Creed. A cloud edges the sun. The light cools on the painting's face. The host speaks first because winners do not like to be seen as second. I accept, he says, though the word sounds like a stone skidding down a well. On the condition that the first placement is in Rome. The rival laughs once, short and without mirth. You cannot accept for what you do not own. He fixes Gabriel with a gaze sharpened by humiliation and calculation. Name it. My number plus 20% and your little parish project gets its alms. Chiara lifts both envelopes now, weighs them as if they were the same, and sets them down side by side. We are not selling a number, she says. We are buying time. The advisor stands again because some men only believe in leverage they can see. You are making a mistake, he says. Mikhail's phone chirps once, a message arriving like a tide. He glances, smiles without teeth, and turns the screen so the advisor can read the last line of a warrant signed by a Roman magistrate with a fondness for art and an intolerance for fraud. So are you, Mikhail says. It breaks then, not loudly but cleanly. The rival sits calculating salvage. The host flexes his fingers and remembers to breathe. The advisor becomes a man whose calendar has been cleared for the foreseeable future. The Monsignor closes his file with a papery sigh. Ariel lowers the UV lamp and lets daylight do the work of blessing. Gabriel covers the painting. It is not shame, it is respect. One last thing, he says. A woman died in Venice because she was the hinge to your door. Her name will be in the report, so will yours. He does not say which man he is speaking to. Both hear the sentence as if it belonged to him alone. They sign what needs signing in a side room that smells of dust and beeswax. When they return to the square, the crowd has turned, as crowds do, to other wonders. A child chases a pigeon. The fountain throws its water into the air and catches it again, eternal in its generosity. Sacred lines, Chiara says quietly, standing beside him. You drew them well. I only followed them, Gabriel replies. They were there already. The hidden smile is wheeled away under the care of the museums, accompanied by a paper trail that shines like a clean window. The host departs with the relief of a man who has paid for a conscience and plans to keep the receipt. The rival leaves in a car that smells of leather and smoke, his advisor not beside him. Evening folds itself across Rome like a shawl. In a small chapel not far from the square, the Pope kneels alone, offering thanks for something that will not make a headline. Gabriel steps into the cool and stands 2 pews back, not close enough to be a conversation, close enough to be a courtesy. The man in white does not turn, he does not have to. Some recognitions travel without eyes. Outside, the sky deepens to the color of old lapis. Mikhail lights a cigarette and then remembers to put it out before Ariel frowns. Chiara links her arm through Gabriel's. A glass of wine, she suggests. 2, Gabriel says, because sometimes mercy needs a companion. They walk toward a trattoria where the tables wobble and the bread arrives warm and the owner knows everyone by their wrong names. The street smells of tomatoes and basil and rain upon stone. Behind them, St. Peter's glows like a lighthouse that never learned to be tired. The city exhales. The storm recedes, leaving in its wake a line as thin and necessary as gold leaf. What is owed to beauty? What is owed to the living? What is owed to the dead? The trattoria is tucked into a side street so narrow that 2 passing Vespas would have to negotiate terms. Inside, the walls are the warm yellow of aged parchment, lined with framed black and white photographs of patrons who look like they've been telling the same stories for decades. The air is dense with the scent of slow-cooked tomatoes, garlic, and the faint sweetness of wine poured generously from a bottle that never seems to empty. Gabriel sits with Chiara, Ariel, and Mikhail at a small table near the window, the street lamp outside casting soft pools of light on the worn tabletop. Their conversation drifts easily at first. Teasing Mikhail about his theatrics with the magistrate's warrant, Chiara recounting the expression on the rival's face when the conditions were laid out, Ariel quietly pleased that the hidden smile will spend at least part of its life where it can be seen. But the levity fades when the talk turns to the woman in Venice. Ariel is the one to speak her name aloud, soft but deliberate, as if placing it on the table beside the bread and the wine. For a moment, the clatter of plates and hum of other conversations seem to recede. Gabriel raises his glass and the others follow, a silent toast in the crowded room. Mikhail breaks the quiet with his usual bluntness. We caught the big fish, but the net's still in the water. Others will try to swim through. They always do, Gabriel says. He sets his glass down, the stem cool against his fingers. But every time we tangle the lines, it slows them, gives the right people a chance to breathe. From somewhere deeper in the trattoria, the owner calls out in greeting, sending over a plate of warm focaccia drizzled with olive oil. It arrives like a benediction, and the conversation shifts again. Talk of Florence, of a small museum in Umbria that might be the painting's first placement, of a cardinal who has already hinted at hosting it in Rome during Lent. Later, walking back through the Roman night, the city feels softer, less guarded. The streets glisten faintly from a passing shower, reflecting the warm lights of shop fronts and the occasional votive flickering in a niche. They pass through a quiet square where a fountain murmurs to itself, the water catching bits of moonlight in its arc. At the edge of the square, Chiara stops and looks back toward the dome of St. Peter's rising over the rooftops. You think they'll keep to the agreement? She asks. They'll try. Gabriel says, not out of virtue, but because we made breaking it cost more than keeping it. Ariel smiles faintly. That's art too, the art of boundaries. They part at the corner. Mikhail disappearing into the night with a nod. Ariel heading toward her lodgings. Chiara walking beside Gabriel until their paths diverge. Alone now, he takes the long way back to his rooms, letting the quiet settle in. Passing over the Ponte Sant'Angelo, he pauses halfway, the Tiber below moving in slow, dark ribbons. The city's lights shimmer in the water, scattered and uncatchable like beauty itself. Somewhere in the museums, the hidden smile rests under controlled light, its false history intact, its true purpose fulfilled for now. Somewhere else, two powerful men sit with the weight of a shared condition, ownership tethered to obligation, the knowledge that their prize is never entirely theirs. Gabriel turns from the river, the cool air brushing his face. The work is done. The painting is safe. The dead have been named, and the living, even for the moment, have been reminded that beauty is not a possession but a trust. He walks on, the city unfolding before him like a canvas still wet with possibility, 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 wet with possibility.